I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I never thought the day would come when I was gonna do a commentary that was directed straight at Tim Fool. Well, y'all know him as Tim Pool, but I call him Tim Fool over here when I do acknowledge his existence. So Tim Fool is now upset with Dave Chappelle because of some jokes that he made at the expense of what happened with Charlie Kirk, and now he wants to get on his platform and act all outraged about it. And I'm glad there's some people with some sense who are seeing straight through his act, if you want to call it that. And actually, I think that's probably the best way to describe it. And I ended up pulling some clips from some of the stuff that he said in there, and I'm just sitting there like shaking my head at it because of how he responded, or how he was when it came to Dave Chappelle a couple years ago, when it came to his Netflix special that Dave Chappelle caught a lot of heat behind. And it's like night and day. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna insert a couple of these clips here, and then we'll go ahead and discuss them.
Nah. So I don't take kindly to the mockery of the killing of Charlie Kirk, because we are headed towards a civil war. I'm going to say it again. I'm not saying we're in civil war, but when Dave Chappelle can be protected in his career mocking the political assassination in one of the most brutal ways, a society that tolerates and venerates assassination is a society that has opened the door to civil war. End of story. He said, right now in America, they say that if you talk about Charlie Kirk, you'll get canceled. Chappelle told the Riyadh audience. I don't know if that's true, but I'm going to find out. It's easier to talk here than it is in America. First of all, that's an egregious lie, as I already pointed out. And he's intentionally fanning the flames over assassination culture. And we just watched Charlie Kirk die. In the future, I will think about what he has said as it pertains to his body of work. I don't think he should. He's not a guy who can be fired. He's wealthy and all of these things. Given Chappelle is obviously a comedian, anything he says on stage can arguably fall under the rubric of, well, he's just kidding. No, I'm not playing that game.
So y'all just heard some of the clips right there, and trust me, it was a task getting them because this was a pretty lengthy video. I think the video was like over 20 minutes long. It was probably some more stuff in there, but I think these are the three right here that is all I needed to get my point across. So the first clip that you heard, because it kind of just shuffles into another one, it's like, if you notice, there's some cuts in there. He's basically talking about how Dave Chappelle was mocking the death of Charlie Kirk and how he was upset behind it and all this, that, and the third. And he says that, if he was in America, he would have got canceled behind it. Remember what just happened with Jimmy Kimmel, and he didn't even say anything about Charlie Kirk. He was more relating that to Donald Trump, and his show got pulled for a weekend. So he had a minor cancellation, if you even want to call it that. So that's probably piggybacking off of what Dave Chappelle was saying in relation to that. If they can get Jimmy Kimmel, then they can get anybody, even if it's very brief when it comes to a person like a Jimmy Kimmel. And then, he wants to do the fear mongering thing and says, when you do stuff like this, like mocking the death of someone in the way that they, went out, you're opening up the doors for a civil war. Tim, I think it's going to take more than what happened with Charlie Kirk for a so-called civil war to occur. It's amazing how a lot of people like Tim Fool and others of his ilk love to bring up this civil war this and civil war that. All these wars, it's like, damn, can we have a little bit of peace? But apparently they don't want that. I bet you Tim would probably want that so he could have something to brag about on his podcast or whatever, his platform or something along those lines. And then he was talking about, that it's wrong, how wrong it is to mock people in their passing, which I find to be very interesting because all I had to do was go on to YouTube and type in Tim Pool George Floyd, and I found a plethora of videos that Tim Fool has made, even as of recent. And when I say recent, I'm talking about within the last month, pertaining to George Floyd. So check this out. Tim Pool exposes Floyd Gate AI slop garbage obsessed with George Floyd. Something could be said about Tim Fool and how he might be obsessed. Cenk Uygur and Tim Pool debate George Floyd's death. Cenk says it was racist. And that's the guy over at the Young Turks, and he's a bit shaky himself. Medical examiner says George Floyd was not a homicide, opening the door for a Chauvin acquittal. Again, all of this is coming from Tim Pool's account, over the last couple of years. And like I said, that first one that I showed, that was the most recent one. That one was like 2 weeks ago. George Floyd girlfriend says state witness is their dealer. Witness there refuses to testify in Chauvin trial. And the last one says George Floyd's friend now admits he may be charged with Floyd's death and refuses to testify in Chauvin case. So it's interesting that Tim Pool loves to talk about mocking people's death and all types of stuff like that when you got those type of videos popping up. I didn't even have to click on the video to let me know. Just the thumbnail and the title alone told me all I needed to know. But I said, let me take it a step further. So I went onto YouTube again and typed in Tim Pool mocked George Floyd, and I think I hit the mother lode with this one. So check out this YouTube short that Tim Pool posted up on his page when I guess he had a panel discussion pertaining to George Floyd. I'm not sure exactly when this discussion was had, but just listen to what he says as well as the people on the panel and what they had to say.
But then you get a brick wall with a picture of George Floyd having a crown and lightning strikes just in the middle, blowing up only one layer of the 2-layer wall, only the mural of George Floyd, leaving the rest of the building intact. And it was a storm that moved in, lightning struck, and then the storm dissipated.
The Lord works in mysterious ways.
And I look
agnostic
at that,
over there.
I look at that and I say, the question is, how do you define what a miracle is? Right? So I've asked theologians this. Is a miracle, say, like a ham sandwich appearing out of thin air and flopping on the table, like, wow, how did that happen? Or is a miracle something that is seemingly defying all odds and occurring in front of you, but still within the realm of possibility? So when you have, it was a brick wall with 2 layers of bricks. Mm-hmm. The middle of the building, which should not be struck by lightning, was struck by lightning, destroying only the mural of George Floyd with the crown and leaving the rest of the mural intact. And I'm just like, I look at that like an act of God.
So y'all heard that. That was a clip from Tim Pool's podcast or whatever that they had. Like I said, I don't know when exactly it was, but they were talking about, and I remember this, when the lightning had struck the George Floyd mural, and people like Tim Pool and the people on his panel and others like that who had that animosity towards George Floyd. Well, let's be honest here, that was animosity towards black people, but they used George Floyd as the vessel. They were saying some of the same things, like they were so excited about it as if like George Floyd came back to life only for God to strike him with lightning to take him out again. I forgot who it was. I think it was, wasn't it Sneeko or one of them other individuals that said that they wish they could bring George Floyd back to life just to take him out. No, it wasn't Sneeko. It was some other unknown individuals. But after a while, when they sounded so much like, they start to look alike too. But he literally said towards the end of this that lightning striking that mural was an act of God. But he wants to sit up here and get mad at Dave Chappelle, who, by the way, he was on his side a few years ago defending him about his Netflix special on, I think it was called The Closer, when he was talking about the people in the trans community. But now, because he said something about Charlie Kirk, is going to spark a civil war or this, that, and the third. But he sat up here and he mocked George Floyd so many times, saying that his mural being struck by lightning was an act of God and that it was somehow divine intervention. These people are wicked. Okay, they are straight up and down evil. There is no redeeming for anybody who has a mindset like this. Again, it's been over 5 years. Now, granted, when he said this, definitely did not happen this year. This was years. This is probably when it was fresh. But still, over 5 years later, George Floyd is still living rent free in these people's heads. Like, we have more than moved on from this. They, for some reason, still have to be stuck on it because they didn't get the results that they wanted. And even if they did, they still would have been talking about it. But they just cannot bear to let it go because that was a huge L that they had to take and they have to bear with it. But the fact that he said up there and he said that about a whole mural and then get mad or upset with Dave Chappelle because he said something about Charlie Kirk, and then had the nerve to get mad because of people, quote unquote, mocking him. What did you just do here? Oh, let me guess. George Floyd's life just didn't matter to him, so he was completely fine with that. But because Charlie Kirk meant something to him, how dare you speak ill about this man? And the thing about the whole cancellation thing, to take it even past Jimmy Kimmel, how many of these fools was online for like the last couple of weeks or so, calling up people's employers and sending them emails telling them and basically snitching on them and trying to get them fired? Some of them were successful. Lawsuits abound, anyone? So Tim Pool is full of it. As in my opinion, this is nothing more than fake outrage from him, and he needed something to discuss because it was a slow news day. Y'all let me know what y'all think about this down in the comments, and I will talk to you in the next one.